Everyone, welcome back. Bettsbirds Golf, the AT&T Byron Nelson preview show at TPC Craig Ranch. Joined as always by my partner in crime here, Andy Molitor. Andy, what's going on, bud?
Not much. Getting ready for a major here. I kind of got my we've had a bunch of events where I just haven't had some time, and then I also had a couple of events where it's like, man, I can't be betting a bunch of matchups at the Mexico Open because of the high variance and the weird field. I got back in the saddle last week with matchups. I not just like, oh, I had a great week. It's not me bragging. It's me bragging that I actually spent the time and I bet daily matchups for 4 days, which felt good. It felt good to be back into my process of betting that. And then we run into this one where the winning scores have been like 25 under. We're gonna have high variance, high, big distributions of scores, and that's the kind of stuff that scares me with matchups. So I'm not as excited about this week for that, but I'm excited to kind of watch some of these guys as we're prepping for the PGA. And I guess I'm surprised that this many people showed up. Like, it made sense last year, and Ron points this out really well in his preview article. If you haven't read that, go read it. But he points out, like, hey, more people showed up to this last year because it was like a 3-hour drive up to Tulsa.
Yeah.
Like the guys were just hopping on their little jets and flying, little half-hour flight up to Tulsa. This year, they have to go all the way up to upstate New York after this. So I'm surprised we still have some fairly decent names here that are, there's 3 or 4 guys that are expected to really compete next week at the PGA.
Yeah, I remember last year hearing on Monday that we had JT and Spieth playing practice rounds at the PGA, and then we even saw that on the Netflix special there in the first episode where they were practicing there. I believe that was leading into this event. So yeah, let's real quick, have you looked into anything in terms of the odds board for Oak Hill? I don't know if you've made any plays, any considerations. Have you done any homework on the course? Anything like that? Because it's we've seen it a handful of times over the years. We haven't seen it in a while. I think 2020 or 2013 was the last time we were in Oak Hill, and they've done some pretty massive renovations in the last 2-3 years. So I don't really think, again, 4 rounds wouldn't be very sticky anyway. Most of those guys aren't even playing. But have you done any work or looked at the board? Is there anything? Because I know Ron posted a couple plays in our subscriber Discord this weekend.
Yeah, Ron, if you are a member, if you're a subscriber, if you're not, get in there. But Ron is already betting on outrights for the PGA, and I agree with some of his thoughts on it. But like you said, we don't have a big swath of like actual data there. I don't think it's going to be super predictive anyway. And I mean, it's a major. It's looking like a really, really tough course. So honestly, at this point, it's probably just like, hey, we're looking for grinders. We're looking for golfers who play well in tough scoring conditions against tough fields, which I'm sure Ron will have splits for next week. And we're looking for guys in good form. So, I mean, it's another one where it's like, it's top of the board. It's guys, if you find some guys 50, 60, 70 who are playing really well, who've had success, maybe just aren't getting the full respect. But it's certainly not a bomb week for me up there with everything I've learned about this course. It looks like a tough ass course.
Yeah, it does.
It is one. It's been used for majors before, and it's been used for both of the U.S. facing majors. They've had, I think they've had U.S. Opens there as well.
Yeah,
maybe I'm mixing it up. I'm honestly, my brain got mixed up last week because I was talking about it, but I was also talking about Quail Hollow, which is hosted majors
sure
as well. So like we had a couple of really tough tournaments, not a bad comp either. Quail Hollow, a little further south. Obviously, the agronomy is a little different in the kind of course design, but it's a tough ass course that's been used for a bunch of majors and has had some redesigns to make it tougher over the years. It's exactly what you're looking at with Oak Hill.
Yeah, and not far off of Southern Hills as well, who got a major facelift last year heading into that event too. So it's pretty, and I always recommend, if you're a golf fan or aficionado, Fried Egg does fantastic video work and coverage, and they have some great videos.
I have that one saved. I haven't had a time to watch it yet. Last week, I think they got theirs out.
Yeah, it's fantastic. 15, 16 minutes. Really strategic bunkering at that place, which I think is going to be, again, it's a major championship, right? You got to have the whole bag. You got to be dialed in. You got to just got to have the whole thing. So it's hard to go too far down the board. And I guess we'll have the conversation that we've been having, even in elevated events. How do we approach essentially the big three, maybe the big two, while Rory kind of seems to try to figure it out a little bit. And then how far down the board are we willing to go? Subscribe.
Yeah, I mean, if you just want to touch real quick on the big three isn't truly the big two quite yet. I don't think people are expecting Rory to keep floundering, but there is starting to be a little bit of a gap right now. And I'm just looking at one book. I know there's going to be a lot of differences, but some of the early market PGA championship odds have Rahm and Scheffler at 8-1, Rory at 12-1, kind of in that second fiddle role. But still, honestly, I'm tempted to bet, and I hate Rory. And again, I'll bet on people I hate when I think there's value. But at that price, if the other two are at 8-1 and Rory's at 12-1, I can get over a couple struggles here and there. This is not the Masters where there's all this pressure. This is a course that actually fits him really well. So I don't hate Rory. You can see the live guys. A couple of them have some decent odds. Brooks, after his performance at the Masters, 18-1 is your fourth favorite. A guy that you're really not getting to see golf all that much, or normal golf. And then, kind of the regular crowd is in there before you get to Cam Young, who's up right around the Tony Finau, Colin Morikawa range with 28-1. But, some of the guys we've been looking at, the Hattons and the Matsuyamas, and I mean, maybe even Shane Lowry, Fleetwood, guys who've had success in the past that are 40, 50, 60, 70. There's some names that, a little further down the road. Justin Rose, 80-1. I'm not saying we're just going to be betting guys who are 12, 15, 22-1. I might go down the bird a little, but it's certainly not going to be, Andy's betting Sergio at 150. That was a bad example. Tom Hoagie at 150. A guy might actually look at betting week to week.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So subscribe so you can get all that information. We'll be here doing that next week. And again, Ron's preview for the Byron Nelson is up on the site, betspurtsgolf.com, and that is free. So take a look at that. Monthly sub still $19.99. That is going to, if you subscribe now, that you can get all the Byron Nelson stuff. But I think if you time it right monthly wise, and just looking to get a taste of monthly, if you come in on the weekend, Friday or Saturday, you're going to get not only this major, but the next major as well. So take a look at that. It's worth checking out. Lots of great tools. You get all of our picks, subscriber Discord. That's where you want to be. And we've talked about, we've been firing and really, again, closing line value in golf outrights is different than if we're betting NFL sides and totals, but you still would rather have the best of the number. Yeah. So we fire pretty early on Monday morning and looking to take advantage of some of those numbers. So Ron, like I said, the preview is up, talking about the field here, to your point. Not as good as last year, but still pretty good. 25 of the top 90 in the world. And that's with AT&T and Texas native Jordan Spieth bowing out with a wrist injury, which is interesting.
Kind of checks out. I mean, did you watch him much live last week? Early?
I did. I watched a good amount of Wells Fargo last week. So yeah, he was not dialed in on Friday.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's, maybe it's the Honda, or that's probably a bad example. Maybe we're sitting there early in the year and it's my wrist is bugging me, but I'm going to play next week. With a major on the horizon like it is, it doesn't make any sense. If it's bugging you and you're worried that you might make it worse, it sucks that you're a Texas guy and, the sponsorships and all that, you have to take this off. But man, you really got to be kind of focused in. He has to know, I'm playing well enough to win a major at this point in my career again. So, I don't blame him at all. But it did kind of create that dead zone. We haven't had that a lot this year. And it sucks because I hate posting odds when I'm doing that. But it wasn't the favorite. But when one of the two or three guys were sitting there between, I don't want to say zero, but what's the lowest odds we've had in the last few years? 250 with Rahm in Mexico last year. When you have anyone that's up to 10 or 15-1 that steps out of the field, there's going to be a reshuffle. They're going to have to redistribute that win equity among the rest of the field. And you're not going to see the guys that are 200-1 move. It's going to be the guys in the middle of the pack. So there was some value there. There's always that half hour where books are slow to react, and you can grab some numbers. Jeff Feinberg is just a fiend for that. He's like the guy in, what was the game show where you're in like a supermarket? The old one, that not the Guy Fieri one, like Supermarket Sweep. You're just
Supermarket Sweep.
running through the aisles, like
Yeah.
throwing shit in your cart. That's him when we have one of these events. And I remember last year we had this like 3 or 4 times in like January and February. It was crazy. You could just go on a shopping spree. I'm not sure it mattered all. You still got to get the winner, but there were some pretty good prices that obviously aren't there anymore. I got a couple, but with the adjustment, you're kind of seeing where we're at now and how we had to lower some of the top guys.
There are some corollaries to the betting board with Mexico, to your point, where even just a couple weeks ago, where we had Rahm and Finau, and then the second tier or whatever you want to call it was significantly lighter than I think this is. Whereas this week we did have Scottie and Jordan. Now that Jordan's out, this next little group of Hatton, Day, Tom Kim, Decky is, I think, a little bit better than what we had going down to Mexico.
Oh, too. For sure.
But yeah, now it's shifted. I mean, Scottie early on Monday morning was 5 in some spots. You're basically 350 most spots. There's even a 3 out there at Rivers. So it is short. How do we do this? There's just kind of, I went single bullet Rahm in Mexico. That was not leading into a major. So I do feel this is a little different with Scottie.
Yeah.
And in a spot where we need to get to maybe 22, 23 with it. Again, they've changed the par, the 12th hole, which was just like, I think it had like a 55% birdie rate, something insane. So like we might see literally everyone impacted by a stroke per round on that. So maybe we're supposed to get in the 20s here. Scottie's not been, in terms of like looking for any kinks in the armor, it's kind of been the putting bugaboo a little bit, right? Especially in close to short stuff. And you got to make those quite a bit here. I don't know. I feel like a tune-up pre-major is a little bit different than, Mexico representing your, heritage a little bit. I think there was a little bit of that, like Ron, the Spanish Open essentially here for the PGA Tour. I don't feel that with Scottie. Do you have any interest in firing it? Definitely the best player on the board.
No, I mean, just pre-major warm-up Texas guy. I think he's just here to be here. But that said, he can still just go out there and play fairly decent and win, because it is just an approach. Kind of make your approaches, make your putts, and you're fine. Although I'm not super psyched about the putting, so I'm not obviously going to fire at a guy under 4-1. I usually wouldn't anyway. So
right,
it's a pretty easy skip at the top of the board. I mean, I'm not going to avoid him in like TFS. We're gonna need to use him in some lineups there, but I mean, it's pretty easy to take a quick jump down the board to the next chunk of guys, I guess.
Yeah. This is a TPC course. We know we have TPC Lee is the 2-time defending champ. This is the 3rd time we're at Craig Ranch, which is a little bit different. Again, very straightforward course. The wind is essentially the only thing that's going to keep this from not getting sideways on the scorecard. If you look here, 3rd easiest course on tour the last 2 seasons that's been here, averaging 2.61 strokes to the field per round. We have, again, some water, but not really anything that should be problematic. Some pretty big greens. It is long, especially now that we have the change a little bit in terms of par 71. Again, we've seen, when you look at the leaderboard, Andy, anyone can kind of show up here. I think obviously anytime length can be an advantage because you're not going to be really punished. Maybe apparently they're growing out the rough, but I don't know that that's going to be anything that we need to be really concerned with. What are you kind of weighing statistically here over anything else?
We did see that too. And Ron mentions it in his preview. They're trying to grow out the rough, but it's still May. And, I believe it was his preview, but I saw it elsewhere too. They said like the Bermuda coming out of dormant. It's not just like, hey, it's May 7th and today is the day the Bermuda comes out of dormancy and everything's fine. Like, it is different every year. You'll see that. I mean, every year, go right down the first day you mow your lawn every year for the next 10 years. It's going to be wildly different if you live up north like us. And same kind of thing. The Bermuda wasn't coming out of dormancy as fast as in some other years. And they said like, hey, we grew it out, but it's not going to be like thick. Like, it's still the overall thickness of the rough isn't going to be something that's probably going to be penal even with us growing it out. The fairways are wide as shit. The greens are flat and huge. Like, it's an easy course. It sucks. Like, thanks again, Weiskopf. Like, you made a shitty, resort course. It's a TPC course. It's easy, and it made modeling hard this week because It's like, hey, bombers can do well. Guys who don't hit the ball far but have a lot of accuracy off the tee can do well. Guys who are kind of in the middle, don't do any of that, but really hit their long irons can do well. Guys with spike putting weeks can do well. Golfers who are just good at golf in general because they're top golfers and they can take advantage of all those different areas can do well. I don't think there's like a true like archetype at all that I'm looking at. It's basically it's form week for me, which
Yeah.
I'm looking for form guys, which is who I've bet for outrights. And I'm looking for, spike putting / maybe you're a little bit undervalued for some of my positional stuff. I'll be doing a little more. It's been a long building project where I've run a lot of data in the back on top 20 stuff. And I've had some success just betting on paper. And now I've actually started to put some out, and it was nice. I got a couple top 20s last week. I'm going to try to do a little more of that. It's tougher at an event like this with such a wide distribution of scoring, and the fact that even with the, that shortened and taking one stroke away on that par 5, I mean, even if it is like, hey, it birdies half the time. Well, the guys who aren't getting to birdies are probably the guys who are missing the cut. So you're right. Like the leaders are probably birdieing it 3 out of 4 times, if not 4 out of 4. And I mean, even if you take away 4 strokes, the winner is going to be 21, 22 under. It's still a birdie fest. It's still an absolute scoring putting contest, dart throwing contest. So form guys, like I can't have an archetype here. It's just who's playing in form and who do they have some of those traits that we're looking for on a scoreable course. Like, are you good at bogey avoidance? Are you really good at proximity? Do you have a long drive? Do you have, and course history here is really non-predictive. And I think Ron touches on that too. It's one of the least predictive in the entire tour calendar, which is funny that we've had a guy win it twice in a row.
Exactly. Right.
And sometimes that just speaks to the variance of golf. Like he could win it again. I'm not saying that's out of the question. He is a decent course fit. I bet against him last week. It didn't work out. I think all of my full tournament matchups were settled on Friday. And that one was one of the losses. I think I lost that one by like 10 strokes. Cagesley played very good golf, and such is life. But yeah, form guys for me, and it sucks that the prices have come down on this. And I think I might be fighting against God, I'm trying to think of the character from Arrested Development that had this too. It was Liza Minnelli.
Oh, Vertigo? Yeah.
I'm fighting against Vertigo. Like, truthfully, the way this is priced out, I think it might be priced in.
Lucille Ostero.
Yeah, the other Lucille.
Yep.
And Vertigo, I've had friends who've had Vertigo. It's no joke. Like, it can really throw you off. And if he's all vertigoed up, I guess I'm screwed. But, like, form-wise, you can't do much better. Like, everybody I bet is pretty much – I do a rolling form model. And everybody I bet this week outright is top 5 for me in my rolling form.
Okay.
And again, this is a guy, if you go look at his recent form, even back as far as a year, you find a tournament with easy scoring conditions, he's done well. And he's been, kind of a bit of a resurgent player. And then just like, how we've played, again, it's all form for me. 4 straight top 10s earlier this season when he was really on. And good showings at the Masters, the Players, the match play despite some vertigo issues. And yeah, let's just hope Jason Day is healthy, because he absolutely competes if he's not playing around with some sort of inner ear imbalance where he's falling down. So I'm not excited about any of my outrights this week, but I still think this price is bad. I think he should be kind of down there, closer to, what do we have? Hatton. I think the Hatton thing is starting to get a little bit out of hand. I like him a lot more next week than this week.
Yeah, that's interesting. Hatton was the guy at the top of the board that I was interested in pre-flop, essentially. Yeah,
I was too. It's just the price was way too far.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we would get a 20. I don't know. That became clear that we weren't. And then obviously with the speed stuff, like the 16 that was out there, everything's kind of collapsed into the 12 range.
And Chris, you can still get 1750 on day. I got 19 or 20 before the speed thing. You should be able to find a 17. I'm not sure what the best price out in the legals is right now.
FanDuel 17 still.
17.
Yep.
I still think that's very bettable.
Yep. Yeah, no problem with that. Yeah, like I said, Hatton was the guy that I considered, or that I was kind of circling. Just everything that kind of checks out here. The long irons come into play. I think 35% last year were your approach shots from 200 plus. So you are going to have some of those. Again, they are easy, but that's a strength of his game. He can get really hot with the putter, a little longer off the tee than you would think he is. But again, the 12 is really hard for me to do here. Again, this could be a Finau situation where we're talking about, Scottie being a yes or no, and then the guys right behind him, with like Day and Hatton, are the guys that actually the ones that we probably should have been circling. Tom Kim also opened really big, 28s out there, 24s pretty quickly, and then Tom Kim has got crushed in the market. And again, we're down to 14. There's still a 17 on Tom Kim. I don't know. I can't do it. It's a little rich for me in a similar way to Hatton. It's just, the ball striking is fantastic. That's kind of his bread and butter. He's had like red hot putting weeks, but we just don't see it consistently enough. I don't know that Tom Kim's a guy that I'm going to be chasing into the mid 20s, but I don't know. We're so early. The kid's 20 years old. Who knows? But Tom Kim, is that any consideration there for you?
I bet him.
There we go.
And again, like, this price sucks. I don't know if you should bet him anymore under 20. Like, this is pretty much the best in the market. Might be like a live ad. This might be somebody using matchups, somebody using positional stuff. But yeah, if you bet him early in the week, you got some really good numbers. And then it got beat the shit down. Yep. And then we had the Spieth withdrawal, and now he's under 20. Again, getting him over 20 is a lot different. Even right before the Spieth stuff, there were 22s, 24s in the market. I still wanted to talk about him because I bet him, but and Ron pointed out too, this was a good tweet by him because this is something we've seen, but club speed, ball speed, driving distance, all trending up, which is nice because it's reverse Rory. Like, Rory had all that. He built this crazy long drive by picking up the club speed, but he had that miss. We weren't seeing the accuracy. Kim has the accuracy, and now he's picking up the speed and the distance. So he's kind of best of both worlds off the tee right now. I think he's going to be really good off the tee this week. We had the hype last year when Wyndham? Did he win the Wyndham?
Yeah.
And then he won one of the swing season events, which I cannot remember, obviously, because those are all very forgettable. But he had a couple of really nice finishes in the fall. The hype, the shine is kind of worn off, but he's still very good, and especially in this field. Great greens and regulation percentage, bogey avoidance. Like, he's going to score here. It's just, would you take this price anymore? I'm not excited about it under 20 anymore. I still just want to talk about him, though.
Yeah, he won the Shriners a couple weeks after winning the Wyndham.
There we go, Shriners.
Yeah,
I would not have remembered that.
Yeah, I like to get into the board early Monday morning. I typically talk to our old friend here, Jeff Feinberg, very early on Monday mornings as well. We were talking Tom Kim. I helped him get down on an early FanDuel number on him. We were kind of going back and forth, and he made some good points. And then basically, as I was kind of getting convinced a little bit to get in, the number just kept drifting. We went from 24 to 20 real quick, and all of a sudden it was kind of getting away from me. And again, like, you want the winner, right? So, like, yeah, who cares if he didn't get the best of the number if he's the right guy? There's so much variance in this event, and I just wanted to go a little bit further down the board once I did not fire off on Hatton. And I think the one thing that you made a good point in there too. We're still waiting on tee times. If we get an early Scottie tee time, he happens to go out in the first wave on Tuesday, and Scottie goes out and does anything that resembles Scottie, 4 under, 5 under, right? Not the first round leader or anything, but he starts to really just looks like he's got it a little bit. Man, Scottie's going to be like minus 110. And all these guys, anyone in this top range, say 25 or shorter, that doesn't tee off, is going to get a little bit longer. So, if you happen to we get lucky there and we get an early Scottie, you might see Tom Kim balloon back out to 20 plus. You might see a little bit longer Jason Day or Tyrrell Hatton. So worth noting, if you haven't got down on these guys, I don't think I would fire on them at their current number. Might be able to get them ballooned out a little bit if we happen to get that tee time break.
Yeah, it's even betting into this pre-Spieth. Like, I hated a lot of these prices. I hated that I like these guys, but I said I'm going to go find the guys who I think can play well, that have the form, and I'm just going to bet them. So I did go a little smaller on outrights this week. I'm not excited about it. I just want to focus in on matchups. But yeah, Tom Kim, maybe a good live ad if you can find a decent spot, like you said.
Where are you at on Decky? Obviously it's kind of the same thing every week, right? It's really hard to trust when he plays. He typically plays pretty well. He can go out and win here. He was third here last year, pre-major. So like he's getting, fine tuning things. Like, I don't know. You look historically, he's played pretty well weeks leading into majors. Obviously he's just a constant, like Jason Day. Can you stomach 2 withdrawal possibles on the card? Did you give any looks to
I did. I like him. I like the fit. I like the ceiling, but if I bet him, it'd be 50-1 next week instead of this week.
Yeah.
It's a tough ask at the price with the high variability, and that's coming from a guy who bet on Jason Day.
Because he's interesting. I was looking at him, and then he kind of wasn't impacted by the Spieth news, which I think is kind of speaks to how the betting market or the betting public feels about Hideki in a given week, because we just don't really know. No one is really super confident making that click. There are 24s out there, so 20 is not really as appealing, but at 24. But to your point, like, man, if he looks good this week and he is kind of in the top 10 and in the mix and feels pretty good.
I think I might be betting. Be betting the PGA Championship Friday. Like I might be looking at, hey, there's 5 or 6 guys I'm going to circle. I'm going to watch them heavily on Thursday and Friday. And if I think they're playing well enough on an easy course and they have the pedigree to play well on a tough course, there's somebody I'm going to add. And Hideki's right up there. I mean, kind of sneaky form. Like people aren't talking about Hideki, and we're disgusted by this 25-1, but he's 5th at the Players. That's a tough field. That's a tough course. He's top 20 at the Masters. Like he's played well this year when he's not pulling out with an injury. But he's still a very good player. He's a former major winner, and he absolutely can play well at a tough course next week. So he is on the short list for the PGA.
Yeah, putting is better. He's, I think, a little bit better than field average all of a sudden. The driving distance is down, which is curious to me. But, that we are seeing he's still only 31. Like, he's been around for so long. We get some of these guys who are like, oh, this new young guy. And he's like, oh, he's 29. But no, Decky's been around forever.
About the last year or so, his putting has kind of gotten.
Yeah.
It's not like it's certainly not up and to the right, but it's to the right and slightly up. Like he's starting to be. I'm the guy who's gaining 0.1 strokes putting every week, which is just such an improvement over what we've gotten historically, even when he was winning events.
Yep. And we're on bent grass this week. We're on bent grass next week at Oak Hill, and that is one of his, I believe, his best putting service. So worth noting there. Kate Lee, you are paying the piper here to get the three-peat. He is, again, playing good golf, but you're basically looking at 25 as the best in the market that I'm seeing. Very, 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 very rich. Did you give any consideration to
God, this price is it's a non-predictive course with course history, and it's silly. This is like it's almost like the Charlie Hoffman thing. Right. Except he's actually playing decent golf. Like the Charlie Hoffman thing was like, oh man, but he's playing really bad. Like he's not going to win. This is clearly not the same. He's playing good golf, but not 25-1 in this field. Kind of good.
No, I agree. So this is kind of where we start to see the drop off, and the prices get a little bit tougher to stomach. I just can never. I'm just not a Kuchar guy. Kuchar at 25 is definitely not appealing in any way, shape, or form. We go down to Siwoo, who's of interest a little bit. Those numbers are not bad relative to the field. Am I next, or do you have another one? Because I've not seen your card. I don't know where you're at.
I bet Kuchar.
Oh, okay.
This one pained me maybe more than betting Rory.
I was going to say,
if I ever did, like, this is one where, 25 is untenable, but there were some 35s. 33 still exists in the market right now. And this was one where it's like, when I ran the rolling form model, it's like,
he's been playing well.
Hey, Matt Kuchar is in this. Like, not only high, but he's quietly top 5 in my rolling form model. It's been kind of a nice top, 2023. He hasn't really popped, but He was 23rd last week. He was top 20 at the Heritage. He was third at the Valero. He didn't play well at the Players, but it's Matt Kuchar. It's a tough event. He's still Matt Kuchar. Has some other top 10s this season. Putted well down at Phoenix. What kind of greens do they have down there? We're looking at a guy who has a really good short game, and I think that was part of the allure too. Is hey, he's not long off the tee, accurate enough, but certainly not long off the tee. He's not going to be a joke when it comes to his off the tee numbers. He's still going to play just fine here, but his tee to green stuff is good enough with the approach, with the irons. But he has those spike putting weeks. You want to get in a putting contest and win? Like, it's a guy who's playing well in a field that's missing a lot of the top players, and he has these 5+ gaining 5+ strokes on the greens alone 4 times since the BMW. It's just like you have that spike week where all of a sudden your putting is carrying you to a 7th, a 20th, a 15th. And, if he can put it together with the irons and still putt that well, honestly, his whole short game is good. He's great around the green as well. Not that he should be missing these massive greens, but pure bent grass like this, good lag putter, good overall putter. If he can spike and have like 7, 8, 9, 10 strokes gained on the green here, because, it's one thing like, oh, he gained 5 at the BMW. It's different. Although there are some similarities to the courses, but it's a different kind of course. Like, this is the kind of course where you can gain like 9 strokes on the green.
Yeah.
If you're really putting well, because of how low the scoring should be here. So if he has a spike putting week, he's absolutely in the mix, and I'm disgusted. Just disgusted betting. My card is just gross.
Yeah, I wish Rory was in the field. You can just complete the whole thing. Matt Kuchar also short arms and deep pockets, as we know. So a little tougher to stomach. Do you have another one? Because again, I'm flying blind. I don't know. So you've got 3 here in the 30 to 16,
30
range.
And under. Yeah, 35 and under. No, I considered Hoagie.
Okay.
I will tell you, I'm still working on top 20 stuff, and I'll just rip through because all my top 20 possibilities are kind of in that X range. Hoagie, Minwoo, Jaeger, and then like Spawn and Sam Stevens. Kind of that's the top end of the short list. And I think there's somebody on that list you like, at least one.
I think a couple that I've bet, because I'm embracing the variance this week in terms of outright betting. I think that it is an unpredictable course, an unpredictable event. I think going with it was 1 of 2 ways. I typically lean the way that you went, form a little bit more than anything else. I brought in just a little bit more variance. I'm looking at guys that just can typically score really well. So birdie or better rate, eagle rate, opportunities. Just put yourself in a position to score. And if it is kind of a putting contest, theoretically it brings bad putters into it too. But like if your baseline is just really good at putting, and maybe you can have spiked approach weeks or spiked tee to green week, which again happens less often than the other, but that's kind of the way that I went on the board. So Minwoo Lee was my first outright bet here at 48 to 1. And they're mostly still out there, 45s. It looks like it's so 40s to 45. Super streaky, young kid, still trying to figure it out a little bit. Can hit it a mile, 7th in this field in distance over his last 50 rounds. Eagles and birdies in bunches, 6th in eagle rate, 13th in birdie or better rate. And he had just this white hot run that we haven't really got back to. Again, he final group on Sunday with Scottie at the Players, and then just kind of shit the bed, I think, on the 3rd hole, and it was kind of done from there.
Yeah.
But in Europe in the swing season, he had 8 straight events where he finished T13 or better. 4 of those were like 3rd or 2nd. Like, he can compete. He's like, the upside is there. So in a spot where, again, he's not going to have to worry about spraying it a little bit off the tee, he can lean into the distance and put himself in position in some of these birdies or birdie holes. I like him quite a bit at this number. Again, just a guy that I've been kind of waiting in the right kind of combination of course and number to bet. And this is the week for me to get in the Minwoo train at 48. So like I said, 45 still out there, which I don't hate at all.
Yeah, no, this is like I said, if I do my normal rolling form model, he doesn't price out that well. He's like top 50, which is great. But you start to pull in the DP Tour stats. It's like, oh no, you're actually good. What's the Shaq meme? Oh, I was unfamiliar with your I was
Right.
unfamiliar with your work. No, it's it obviously bumps up quite a bit with and you have to weight that differently. Although there's plenty of DP events where there's a lot of top golfers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of top golfers who just don't make their way over here, and it's tough to make some of the comparisons. Like, how good is this guy compared to like a Spieth? And I think there's some pretty good names over there. So he bumps up there, and yeah, just the spike availability. I like him a lot as a top 20.
Yep. That makes sense too. It's a lot of volatility in those guys. And you mentioned too, because we're going to be so confined with scoring this week too. Those are a little bit harder. So pick your spots really well there. In the same range, again, this is a guy you and I talked about in the swing season early on. It's like, hey, do we just, when the number is right, should we just be betting Taylor Montgomery more times than not? He is basically any way you stretch it, 5 to 10, 10 to 15 is the best putter in the field. And in a week where putting matters, I'm going to lean into that variance a little bit. The off the tee game is impressive as well. Just kind of that like bomb and gouge, kind of like an old school Sam Burns before Burns kind of put the rest of the bag together. Burns can hit it a mile and can get really hot on the greens. Now you had to hold your breath sometimes with the approach game, and that's kind of where we're at. Although from long distance, Taylor Montgomery has been pretty good in terms of proximity, 200 plus. So yeah, just 50s, I think, are a little too long. Let me see where we're at now. Let's move a little bit. 40s. Looks like 46 still on FanDuel if you're interested in Taylor Montgomery outright. Like, again, has been in the mix a little bit less than he was in the swing season. But to put together a couple of recent outings that looked pretty good. Played pretty well in Zurich, which I thought was decent and encouraging. So Taylor Montgomery at 50 in a field that I think is pretty wide open was something that I was interested in pretty early on Monday morning.
Yeah, and again, we talked about him preseason. A lot of talk early in the year. Hey, is this a guy that's gonna suddenly win an event on tour this year? I still believe he can. His form is trending down short term, but over the kind of the year, I still like him. He's high enough in my form model where I looked at him and then I said, hey, you're also a bomber. Hey, you also have putting. Like, if I only bet one top 20 this week, it will be him. Like,
Okay.
I would, if I said I only get one out of this, this short list that I'm trying to whittle down, he's kind of at the top because he does have the form, the upside, and then two really good traits for a scoring course like this.
Yep. So those guys have a little bit less, I would say, kind of off the board in terms of how I typically find guys that are on my radar. The other guy you've kind of circled around in the same range, there were 60s on Tom Hoge. Tom Hoge was, another fire for me in the outright. We've seen just pretty consistently, no matter really the stretch that you want to kind of wait in terms of like really recent or longer. He's the best iron player in the field and really one of the best in the world consistently. He's first in strokes gained approach and 200-yard proximity over the past 50 rounds. He also can score. Like, the putting is getting better, and we've seen the spike putting weeks. Remember back to the set the course record at TBC Sawgrass, just a couple of months ago, where he can get really, really hot. He's top 6 in both eagle and birdie rate over the last 50 rounds as well. So a little bit more predictable. The driving isn't, we don't typically like him where length isn't necessary, but he's not bad. Like, we're not talking about a guy it's not Ryan Armour per se. Like, Tom Hoge is still going to be able to compete. So, more typically my brand and predictability on approach and stuff like that. So Hoge at 60. Let me see what I can get for Hoge. He's shrunk a little bit with the JT or the SP stuff.
Yeah, he's just like, we need a cool nickname to compare him to. Like, I don't know, he's like D-Gen Colin, and he's Thickakawa. Like, he's good. He's so good with his irons. And then he does this thing. It's like, it reminds me of that event maybe last year with before he went to live. There was an event where Poulter just started making everything.
Yeah.
Just like, it was one of those where he had no chance at winning. He pulled full Rory, where it's like, this guy's going to shoot a 63 on Sunday to place tied for 11th or whatever. But Hoge does that a bunch, where it's just like, how did he make the last 3 putts? Like, when he's rating him well. Bent grass, he plays well on. And yeah, he's another one, like I said,
Texas guy.
He's in my top 20 stuff.
Yeah.
It's TCU product via Fargo, North Dakota. Tommy Tables, I like that quite a bit.
This next range is interesting to me. There are a number of guys that were something that I would look at still in the, again, kind of hovering in the 50 to 100 range, I guess we would say. Aaron Wise is back, hopefully healthy and ready to go. Again, just we need to see it a little bit from Aaron. But again, I hope he has a good week and can kind of build off of that. If I look at just long term, like what I kind of plugged in model wise and built it out to like 75, 100 rounds, I had Aaron Wise second in the field in my model this week. So I did not pull the trigger. I will not be betting him in any capacity, but I will be rooting for him, and hopefully he can put together some good golf here. Again, he won the Byron Nelson a handful of years ago, different course. So not something that I would lean on here at all. We get into a couple other guys that are pretty good putters historically, if we're leaning on that a little bit, with Matt McNeely and Christian Bezaden, who Seabass has been playing pretty good golf. I gave him a long look. 70 is the best number if something that's of interest to you. Have you dabbled in terms of outrights, or these are all just going to be finishing position guys?
Just, the three that I placed, it's small. It's just going to be small. My outright nose has been off all year. I thought I had one right off the get-go. We had Colin right away at the Sony or TOC or whatever it was. Like 7-stroke lead on Saturday, never was to be. And then from there, I think my brain broke. So smaller on outrights. I'm just going to, play to my strengths and try to continue to, figure out what makes a top 20 golfer that week and try to attack some of those markets. I've had some, like I said, I've had some fun trying to puzzle that out in the back end, and I'm ready to fully implement that and start playing like you do a little more into the positional markets.
It's funny because I've been trying to look through more carefully on Wednesday evening and looking at matchups, looking at full rounds or full event matchups a little bit more.
No, the offerings at the legal books are just horrid, though.
They're not good. Yeah, that's the problem.
It's really rough. Like I do look at those once in a while just to see like, hey, is there anything? It's like, oh my god, you have like 8.
Yeah,
and it's just like. It's like a round robin of the top 5 golfers. Like, hey, it's Scottie and Rory, and Scottie and Colin and Rory, and it's like these are bad. These are really rough. They need to step that up quite a bit. And then you go to like an event like Wells Fargo, and like Bookmaker had like 50 first-round matchups.
Yeah, I'm jealous of that for sure. That'd be something that, again, you're killing it. So if nothing else, I could tail you while I kind of play around with some stuff. But yeah, hopefully the domestics get a little bit better there. One last outright for me. You mentioned him. Number way gone. Looks like 60s, 70s on Sam Stevens. I got Sam Stevens at 100. He's good. I think he's like just good at golf. He is 4th in my model over the last 50 rounds. There's really no like noticeable weakness per se. He is really good at long par 4s. Long proximity. He's been pretty terrific. Above average distance, a ton of eagles, birdie or better rate, solid. Really good putter from 10 to 15 feet, which you're going to give yourself a bunch of those looks. There's really nothing, middle of the pack-ish, towards the top half, I guess, in approach, but like everything's been really good with Sam Stevens as of late. So 100 was just a bad number for me. So the market kind of agrees with me in terms of where we've moved. Like 75 is the best that you can get out there still on FanDuel. But yeah, he's playing pretty good. Not a guy that was on my radar a lot coming into the season, but caught my attention with the just really strong tee to green play all season long.
Yeah, and it's true to what I said. Form rules everything around me this week. His is good enough where I'm very much considering he's like 350 to top 20. This might be I just sit and absolutely bitch about the legal books, but something you don't have in the offshores is top 30 and top 40 markets. I do have to delve down to Iowa or Venmo people money to bet that sort of thing. So just if there's a make cut price on him around even, I really doubt we'll see that. I should look because I think some of the legal books have make miss up at this point. I know I only have it for the Soodle Open at this point on Bet Online, but I like him quite a bit. It's like a cheap top 40 price.
He is FanDuel's the only one that I see right now that has make cut. He's minus 215.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Ugh. What is it? Top 90 in ties? What are we doing here?
That's kind of where they drop off, to be honest. Like in that tier is kind of where they stop listing guys. So that's literally the shortest price that they have.
I was thinking like minus 150.
Yeah. Maybe someone else gets into that market here.
We'll dig in, but yeah, top 30, top 40, maybe even a sneaky top 20 plus 350.
Some of the guys that I have on the board that I'm considering in terms of finishing position bets as well, as you mentioned, Eric Cole's been playing really good golf. He continues to pop. We've seen him play better at harder courses, but again, we just don't have a huge sample of Eric Cole golf, so I'm okay.
No, I have a good form rating on him, but I just don't have the sample to like take it seriously.
Yeah, so I think that
Stevens and Griffin are kind of in that same boat.
Yeah, those are some other names too. Sam Ryder, I don't know. He's been tough since not being able to close the deal at the Farmers. What's going on with Jimmy Walker? Hell with you, Lyme's disease. Jimmy Walker dialing back the clock here and is playing pretty good golf. He's popped a couple different times where he's like all of a sudden the weekends on the first page of the leaderboard and kind of doing it sneaky long off the tee. Jimmy Walker still bombing it out there, which is surprising to me.
Yeah, I see. Ron bet the other one. Somebody I bet a couple times last week, and I mean it's even in the fields. I always mix up my woos. I don't think Dylan's here. I think it's just Brandon.
Where are we at woo wise?
What's the situation on the woos?
Dylan
is here.
Dylan's here. Yeah,
I thought so. See, this is where I get in my head about this, but Dylan Wu is someone who I bet a couple times last week in daily matchups, and I mean, one of them wasn't even close. They matched him up with Stewie Sink, and I mean, it was like minus 130 or something. I laid the half stroke there and just played the three-way line, and he still cruised, but he's somebody too I've been looking at. And he's a little further down the board. I'm not sure what you see for Wu prices. Like Brandon is, 50, 60, but Dylan's like 100 to 1. That's another one I'd be looking at. It's like a top 40 price. And if they're gonna continue to match him up with like, hey, you're gonna give me like a Dylan Wu over, like Luke List matchup or Robbie Shelton or some of the people in that range, like I'm probably gonna be betting on Dylan Wu again.
Dylan Wu is 4 to 1 on FanDuel for a T20. Yeah. 275 on MGM, which pays ties in full, which I think it will be probably even more important this week, based off of kind of the distribution of scores that we're expecting here. So you probably will see some bunching. Dylan Wu's been playing good golf. We considered him, I think, a couple weeks ago, maybe Mexico, and then he played pretty well there. It's
just kind of like good all around golf.
Yeah,
we're not seeing like, and he did have sort of a spike putting week last week. He gained a lot, but it was like 20th at the Fargo. He played well in Mexico. Yep. I think it was Pebble Beach or the Honda. It was one of those here it is. Honda 10th at the Honda. Like he's kind of had decent golf. He hasn't missed the cut since the Farmers. So yep. Just kind of looking at it, and he's 100 to 1. I'm not saying bet him outright, but I'm certainly looking at him for some other ways to bet on.
Yeah, I mean, the Honda could not be more different, but in the same sense, like it's a tougher course, but you have a lot of long irons, which I think there is some, similar like an Eric Cole played really well there as well, right?
The water forces you to have some long irons there. Here, it's just the length.
Right, exactly. Yep, so you do get into that. Trey Mullinax is a guy that I like to bet. Played better than I was expecting last week. Again, can hit it a mile. It can get really hot with the putter. He is a form guy. Form is fickle, though, when it starts, but Trey Mullinax is of interest to me in terms of, maybe a plus money finishing position bet, top 30, top 40. Same thing, Joseph Bramlett's another guy that hits in a mile, playing decent golf. That's another guy that's of interest. And Michael Kim, similar, not playing great golf, but playing really good and doing pretty much everything in the bag well. And he's a little further down the board in terms of the outright positions. He's like in the 90 range or so. So you're going to get a decent number for him in the finishing position market as well. He's been pretty popular. Looks like 320 to top 20. So Michael Kim is another guy that's on the list.
Another one that I kind of looked at. It's just like, hey, is he good again? Are we doing this? Or is Michael Kim a thing right now? And I mean, everything I've looked at is like kind of. So
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, he's on the list. He made the list, guys.
It's an important list to be on. Yeah. I wanted actually Bhatia. This is a Bhatia setup. I did not. I see he was a late withdrawal here, but Bhatia would have been another spot to pour into my plus 60 to 1 losers that you like to bet on every week. Bhatia will continue to do that. I just want to continue to bet on that kid long term, and I got to move off of Aaron Wise emotionally, so I need to kind of latch on to some other guys that can steal my money consistently. So looking at you actually. Yeah. But that's about it. But anything else? Anyone else you want to mention?
I was going to say Michael Kim's high enough in my form. My form model goes Scheffler, Hatton, and then Kuchar, Kim, Matsuyama, and then, like I said, Eric Cole. He's up there, but the sample size isn't great. Jaeger, he's the last one you didn't really touch on as far as people I'm looking at for positional. The German I'd be looking at. Sam Stevens, he's up there in the form model. The sample isn't good, much similar to Ben Griffin, who I'll get to. KH Lee, he's 10th. It's, we're joking about not betting on him here, but he's playing good enough golf to win this event for a third time, which would be hilarious. Benny Ann, he's up there. And then Dylan Wu, Michael Kim, Harry Hall. Harry Hall's another one where it's like, I don't think this, I think the sample is absolutely affecting that at this point. JJ Spawn, you know how I am with JJ Spawn. I might look at him. Hoagie and Montgomery, 20 and 21st in my form stuff.
Harry Hall can putt it really well. I know that for a fact. So if you're leaning on, the Harry Hall, Sam Ryder, Tyler Montgomery wave of, hey, we just take some of the best putters and hope they do the rest of the stuff pretty well this week. I get why you would put Harry Hall in the play.
Didn't play very well last week, but has had some good events like on the, I don't want to call it Mexico an alt event, but fucking kind of, man. Yeah, it kind of is. But like his last 3 best finishes in the last 6 months were Mexico, Punta Cana, and Puerto Rico. Like, let's take that and use that and bet him next time we're in the tropics.
Yeah, Ryan Palmer, Texas guy, typically plays well on bent. Typically plays well in Texas. It's just not a lot of. Also, another guy is a little bit older, but can still hit it pretty far, surprisingly. He's another last kind of guy on my list that was worth mentioning. So that's it for me. Go over to the site, check out Ron's free preview, and get a subscription. Right, Andy? Easy.
Yeah, hop in, $20 a month. You get all of Ron's picks for this week, and he's starting to put in, like we said, he's already putting in picks for the PGA Championship. I'll have some on Friday. I'll have my matchups hopefully tomorrow morning. I'll have some positional stuff yet this week. And then all the paywall premium articles, the tool that I'm building my models in. I built my form model. The nicest thing, and not to disparage other companies that have done this, but that was the most annoying thing, was the way I used to build my model. I had to do the same thing every week and say, I would like these four, and not breaking ground or breaking news here, but for form, I used strokes gained total. Like, that's just, that's the base of absolutely, encompassing all of your strokes gained. How did you play against the field? Obviously, I'd love to have some of that stuff field weighted, but for now, just that's what I use for rolling form. The nicest part about the model over here at BetSports Golf is I've made it, and then it just updates every week. I just go back to it, and it just gives me a form model for that week with the guys, so I don't have to rebuild that model every week, which is awful nice. You can just save them. You can pull them off in a CSV, so you can take them into your Google Sheets and manipulate them however you want, which is also something I do for matchups. Like, my matchups is just copying, pasting everything at Bookmaker, taking everything at BetOnline, putting them into a sheet, and then doing VLOOKUPs and being like, putting a bunch of numbers behind 2 guys' names. Like, how do I have them ranked in these 5 things, and start to evaluate, like, I think these prices are off based on where I take it. And then I actually go and make my prices for those guys. So it's nice to be able to just pull those into spreadsheets right off the site now.
Yep. So check that out.
Although this week, a little harder to build a model. Like we said, basically everybody's going to do well. Like, just show up and play good golf. So I will start to whittle in, kind of like you did. You said, I'm looking for some guys who can score. You did some modeling on birdies are better, eagle rate, like you had with Hoagie, some of those metrics. I think I'm going to have to find some guys like, all right, who has spike rounds in them? Because those are the kind of guys that I'm going to want. Who doesn't have spike rounds in? Because those are matchups I'm going to bet against. Like, hey, the guy went out and played and he shot a 70. Good for him. Like I need guys who are going to out and shoot 65s or 80s.
Yeah, you shoot a 70 here, you're dying. Yeah, you're dead. You just can't hang with a 1 under rounds at a spot like this. Like you got to get into 7s, 8s pretty consistently if you're going to be towards the top of the leaderboard. So yeah, that's a good point. There's some of those guys in this field still. So
yeah. Not sure what the cut was last year, but
I think 5.
It's going to be 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah.
So 70 certainly not getting it done. So if you listen to this as a podcast, leave us a review. If you watched it on YouTube, hit a thumbs up. That's the price of admission, he said after 55 minutes of talking. I appreciate you guys hanging out. If you have any questions, you can hit us up on Twitter. It's right there at the top. If you're listening, at AndyMSFW, at RY Noonan, betspertsgolf.com. Catch you here next week.